All right, we'll try this once again. Music from Yipes, Argyle Avenue. The entire band was generous enough to stop down here, and hopefully we have all the mics working now.
Yes.
Check, 1, 2.
Hi, Tim.
Yeah. Well, I heard through the rumor mill your show tonight is sold out. So
We don't know for sure, but hopefully, close.
Yeah, so you might want to call first before you head down there to just make sure you can get in the door. Otherwise, you're going to have to stand outside and listen. So
I used to do that.
All the time.
Pete Strand and I used to do that.
Someplace else.
Yeah, we'd go downtown to watch bands, but we weren't old enough, so we'd stand outside the window and.
Slip them an extra 20. They'll let you.
the back door thing, you know, you make friends with the doorman. So, okay. Well, again, thanks for stopping down. I'm not going to delve into the history. If people want to look that up, it's out there. Though you've been around a long time, this might be kind of interesting for you because you're drawing. I'm sure you're seeing some familiar faces, and getting some people out of the house who maybe haven't been out of the house in a while. But you're reaching a newer audience too. There's people that, like, I remember people talking about Yipes, but I was too young to see them. They were those guys standing outside. So it must be kind of interesting to reach a whole new audience.
In Minneapolis the other night, a guy came up and said, I'm from Tosa, but I've been working at record stores since I moved up to Minneapolis, and your 2 old albums came in, and I saw Milwaukee, and I listened to him. I said, hold it, when did this band come out? And he said, he started coming to see my solo show because of the name on the lyrics, and then came to see us last weekend in Minneapolis. So he was a youngin'.
Well, and I think that's great that you're reaching out. You weren't a prolific in the sense of like having a lot of vinyl out there for the amount of time you've been around, but now you've got new stuff out, and that's what. How do you decide though? All of you work in the music and other bands and things. How do you decide? All right, this is a Yipes song.
Well, literally, we sat around as we were getting ready to record. We said, we're going to make an album. We didn't really decide on the songs at that point. Mm-hmm. Pat brought in a bunch of songs that he thought would be appropriate. We would just sit in a circle. He'd play us a song, and if it was the one, we'd hit record and cut the track, learn it and cut the track.
Or we'd go next.
But not that often, because he had a good filter on him. He had a real good filter on what's going to be a Yipes song.
And remember, we didn't play for 38 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to think about what we would have been like now that it's 38 years later. They're not going to be maybe as goofy as we used to be. So that was another, for me, a consideration. I wanted to do something a little more grown up, but still rocking, still loud. We're a loud, wild band, and still are.
Well, and that's great because people have very fond memories of your shows. I mean, we're talking things, you've been around a while, but people like those Marquette shows and stuff is like, oh man, that was like one of the best things I've seen. The whole salt shaker thing and all that.
Yeah. Yes, we were charged with inciting a riot. And we fled.
So you might have to run away a little slower now than you did back in the day, but the music still has that energy, and I think that's great. And now, are these things that you kind of had, Pat? Are these like, all right, I've got to come up with some new songs? Or are these kind of things that you had in the back of your mind for a while, and like, oh, I'm going to dig this out because we never got to this one. I want to get this one down.
It was when we did Summerfest in 2000. What was it, 13 or 14? I never get it right.
14.
We did it on the condition we'd have at least one new song. So that I just said, I'm going to write a song for a grown-up Yipes, and the one I came up with, and it turned out so well that then I started going, well, what if we did make an album So I went through all my songs, and one of them is from that I wrote for a different band, and a bunch of them I played solo, and then some of them, 3 or 4, I just said, okay, and this is before we'd even made a decision to make an album, because I like to keep busy, so I'm always writing, and I don't, I can try them out 5 times a week or 4 times a week in my own show. So I can see, I wonder if people will like this or not. Like the one you just heard, Argyle Avenue, that was written just a couple of blocks from Pete's house in Chicago. I passed that sign every Monday night for 3 years because I played in Chicago on Monday nights. And that song was specifically written for Yipes.
All right.
And inspired sort of by a place and a time, really. It's all made up. It's not about the Argyle Avenue in Chicago.
Well, and you kind of touched on this. Humor has always kind of crept into the band somehow, and people enjoyed that. But all of us are a little more older and hopefully a little more mature. But I'm going to throw this out to the other guys in the band. You're up on stage playing these songs, and do you ever go like, what the heck was Pat thinking when he wrote this one?
I love them all.
No one wants to commit to that one.
No, I think that Pat knows it. Pat knows very well what Yipes sounds like and where Yipes' strengths are, and he writes to them. And as Andy was saying, he brought in songs, he'd audition them, and if it didn't feel like it was right for the current Yipes, we didn't do it. But luckily, he was so focused on bringing material that was going to work that we didn't. It's not like we threw out 80 songs. We probably rejected 2 or 3 out of the total that he brought us. We ended up cutting 11 new originals. So, you do 1,000+ shows together. You start to know the strengths and weaknesses of your bandmates, and it's always in the back of your mind who they are and what they can do. Now, I think it's interesting that I think we're all better players than we were when we did our last show back then.
More disciplined, definitely.
Yeah, and there, it's a different approach, but I think the spirit. We got in the basement. We were invited to go in the Wisconsin Music Hall of Fame in 2013, and they called us up.
So.
Yeah, and they called us up, and I thought, okay, well, we probably Teddy's in Italy, Andy's in Austin, and then he called back and said, we'd really like you to play. I felt like, well, we're being invited to play. Let's do this. And so we got in the basement to rehearse. And it was like, bam, the muscle memory and the chemistry just appeared. And then it was like, well, this is something special. We should see if there's other things we can do. And then the Summerfest show came, and eventually we made this record.
Great.
Another thing is that I noticed. I don't know if you guys noticed. We have not been hanging out for 30+ years. But when we sat down to rehearse, we are all watching the same stuff on HBO, the same stuff on Netflix. We're all listening to a bunch of the same music, and it's like, hold it. It's like almost brothers. That we, it's amazing how many points of reference we all had in common, even after all that time. So it's sort of a organic thing, really.
No, that's cool, and
it is really cool. That you could converse with somebody. Oh yeah, I saw that.
Well, hopefully that comes across on stage to people. I mean, with the experience all you guys have, that comes through. That differentiates bands from one another, and even though this is a short tour, 6 dates, I'm really glad that you decided to get together, do this, and have some fun with it, and we can share in that fun, and I think that's great. Now, when you were putting these songs together, I'm always really curious about this now, because you guys all know this because you've been around long enough. I come from the days when you put that album on and you listen to the whole thing, and a lot of the bands were thinking like, all right, how do these songs fit together? How do we change the mood or continue a certain feeling and now it seems that a lot of things are just song oriented. The people might only know one or two songs from a band. So is this just a collection of songs, or was there more of a thought of like, all right, how is this going to sound from beginning to end?
When I sequenced the album, I don't think we really thought about it ahead of time.
All right.
But when I was sequencing the album, after mixing and spending a whole lot of time with the songs, they started to fit together in like a story to me, in my warped in the studio too long sense. But they started to fit together like a story, and it is. I wish people would listen to it like you said, because I think everybody else, when I sent it back to everybody, it just went, wow, it's just, right through one song to the next, they all blend together into what I feel like a story. And I can still listen to it in sequence. I love it. So I hope everybody else will do it that way. Because especially on CD, it's easy. You don't even have to get up and flip the album.
That's part of the fun of listening, though.
Yeah.
For those of us who still are vinyl freaks.
Oh, I
and
love
stuff.
the vinyl.
So, all right, I'm going to give you guys a little break and catch your breath. But there's one song to me that sounded, I don't know, had a different sound to it. And it kind of, I don't know, I won't say it threw me, but it was kind of like, all right, this is kind of a nice change up here. And that was the song Each Time. And can someone speak to that song or how that came about?
When Andy and I were in a different band before Yipes, we had nothing, we were living in Sheboygan, nothing to do ever, so we'd just go to junk shops, record stores, and we got an album by The Searchers, and we were playing it, and it was like, whoa, some great songs on there, but that one comes on, and it just blew us away, how powerful it was, and exciting, and melodic. So that was kind of one of the basics when we said, let's quit this band and let's start a band that can do songs like this, but also can do songs that are just wide open rocking.
And actually, both of those songs are on the record.
Both the covers
that we bought at that same junk store.
We got Adam Faith for a dime.
Yeah, I still have the single.
You have that?
I still have the one that we bought. And so when we were picking songs for the record, I think we all decided we wanted to kind of go back, because like Pat said, we didn't want to, recreate the old days. But we said, we tried to record Each Time before, and I don't think we really had the technique to pull it off at that time. But this time, we said we want to put something that harkens back to that Genesis. And both of those songs do, and that's part of the story.